Before we begin, viewer discretion is advised, as the following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the summary of the testimony from a former personal assistant for Diddy who began testifying May 29th and was introduced simply as Mia, a pseudonym given to protect her identity. You can read the line-by-line courtroom dialogue as presented by the courtroom reporter at Inner City Press on X.com. The courtroom was still when Mia took the stand. All eyes turned to her, not with suspicion, but with a quiet respect for what she was about to relive. This wasn't just testimony. This was survival finding a voice. She spoke calmly, but the emotion beneath her words was unmistakable. Mia explained that her safety had been tied directly to the happiness of the man who abused her. When he was pleased, she was safe, and when he wasn't, there were consequences. She had known his wrath before, and she feared it. She described the fear in plain terms. Fear not just for herself, but for the consequences that might follow her truth. She had lived with the knowledge of what he was capable of, and that fear had kept her quiet for far too long. But now, seated in a federal courtroom, under oath and facing a battery of lawyers, Mia was done being silent. In this packed federal courtroom, Mia took the stand, her voice steady, but her story anything but calm. What she shared that day wasn't just testimony. It was a journey through years of fear, manipulation, and a haunting pursuit of safety in the shadow of one of music's most powerful men, Sean Diddy Combs. Mia didn't speak with dramatics. She spoke with weight, each word carefully chosen, each sentence echoing the trauma she endured. She was there to tell the truth, not for fame, not for revenge, but because staying silent meant being complicit in her own pain and in the silence of others who might one day find themselves in her shoes. She began by describing the twisted logic that governed her life during those years. You see, for Mia, making the man who abused her happy was more than just survival. It was safety. His moods dictated her reality. When he was pleased, she was spared. When he was angry, she knew what followed. She knew his wrath, and she had experienced it before. She didn't elaborate with graphic detail. She didn't need to. The weight of her words, the fear behind her eyes, it said enough. She had been abused, physically, emotionally, controlled not just by the threat of violence, but by a constant awareness of who he was and what he could do. But Mia wasn't alone in this courtroom journey. She had brought on a pro bono lawyer to help her navigate the legal system. Not for money, not for headlines, just to make sure her story could be heard the way it deserved to be. When asked why she met with the government so many times leading up to this day, Mia's answer was simple. She wanted to be understood. She was terrified of him and of what might happen if she spoke. There was a real danger, not just to her safety, but to her life as she knew it. This wasn't about exaggeration. The prosecutors made it clear she had never been told what to say. She wasn't coached. She was only told one thing: tell the truth. And even that, she admitted, was terrifying. Mia explained that she was terrified of public speaking. Yes, she had worked in comedy before. Yes, she'd stood on stages and made people laugh. But that was different. That was with permission. Puff gave her that space because it served him. But testifying against him, standing in a courtroom and publicly accusing a man like Sean Combs of sexual assault, that was something else entirely. She said there was no comparison between the two. What she was doing now required a different kind of strength, a kind she hadn't known she had. And so the courtroom listened, silent, gripped, as she laid bare her truth. She wasn't there out of vengeance. She was there because she had goddaughters, young girls who looked up to her, and she knew that if she couldn't face this, if she couldn't speak now, then she could never look them in the eye and tell them to speak up if someone ever hurt them. It was a moment of moral clarity, a line in the sand. Even the judge, who had remained stern and professional throughout the hearing, softened slightly at the end of Mia's testimony. He thanked her, told her she could go, unless she wanted to stay. She smiled gently, then she left the courtroom. Her part was done. But the trial continued. Next came a witness from the Beverly Hills Hotel, a woman named Sylvia Oken, who had worked there for 17 years as the director of sales and marketing. Her role may have seemed procedural, but her testimony painted a logistical map of power and secrecy. She explained how reservations worked. The system they used, called Opera, linked aliases to real names. In this case, the alias led back to Sean Combs. He had checked into a room under a different name, but the bill, the charges, it all led back to him. The reservation was arranged through someone named Fletcher at Bad Boy, and the payment came from Combs American Express. Among the charges, a $500 fee for oil damage in the room. Oken also confirmed that another guest had been there during the stay, Cassie Ventura. The defense had no further questions, and with that, the judge turned to the jury, checking the time. The day was ending. He dismissed them with a promise to continue tomorrow. The courtroom emptied, but the weight of what had been shared that day lingered in the air like smoke. Mia's testimony wasn't the beginning of the case against Sean Combs, and it wasn't the end, but it was a turning point, a moment when fear met truth, a moment when silence was shattered, and a moment that reminded everyone listening that behind the headlines and the fame are human beings, people with stories, people who suffer, and people who, when brave enough, can stand against the very forces that tried to silence them.